Bienvenidos a Casa Asia. Somos la principal institución de diplomacia pública en España dedicada a la región de Asia-Pacífico. Desde 2001, acercando la realidad asiática.
Welcome everyone, I'm Rubén Campos, I'm the Programs Director of Club de Madrid, and I have the privilege to have today a conversation with Sundeep Waslekar, that is the author of a new book, well, not new, but it has been recently published in Spanish, A World Without War. We are going to talk about this. But before that, let me thank Casa Asia for graciously host our meeting today. And in the name of Club de Madrid, the organization that I'm representing, we are delighted to have this collaboration with Casa Asia for a long time. And we are delighted to have today Sundeep with us. Today, 11th of September, has some resonance about, certain recent happenings at the beginning of the century. But it also has a very special Indian resonance because this day is a commemoration. At the end of the 19th century, Swami Vivekananda, one of the first Indian philosophers who traveled to the West to share the thoughts and the wisdom of Indian, political, philosophical world, have the opportunity to address a conference of world religions in Chicago on this particular day, just more than a century ago. And in India, this is well celebrated because he made a point of the importance of having a united mankind attitude, and that all religions have very important things in common, independently of the origin of these religions in the world. And maybe Sundeep can reflect about that, but I'm very thankful for having the opportunity to address this issue of war without war in this auspicious celebration from the Indian perspective. So Sundeep is the president of a very important Indian think tank, a Strategic Foresight Group. This think tank is not only focused on India, but it has a world view. It has been very busy in many important issues. One in which they are pioneers is in the context of water and how water can be a source of cooperation and dialogue between countries, even with countries that have similar challenge in terms of sharing the same big rivers or lagoons and or water reservoirs, and how this has been a way for them into reaching agreements, and this agreement has benefit the relations between the two countries. Also on many other multilateral issues, and in particular the one that put us together because the book that is War, Conflict, Resolution, and How We Can Avoid, the score of war, the main challenge and the main, objective of the United Nations, and we have been discussing that before. So we would like to have a dialogue between Sundeep and myself on the topics of his book, and then we can open the conversation to all of you. So maybe we have around half an hour, 40 minutes of dialogue between both, and then anyone who would like to intervene can have the floor to ask questions or reflections regarding the book and Sundeep thoughts. So to start, I would love to give you the floor, Sundeep, and maybe have a first reflections what brought you to the book. I must say that we are privileged in Spanish because the book, who was originally written in 2022, has been now translated into 4 languages: English, French, Marathi, and Indian language, and Spanish now. So in that sense, it's really, well received for an Spanish audience to be able to read your book in our language. But maybe you can, share with the audience, what get you into the mood, to write this book and initial thoughts.
Well, thank you, Rubén. Thank you, Club de Madrid. Thank you, Casa Asia, for inviting me here to discuss my book. It's a great honor. It's a great honor to be in Madrid, in Spain, and it's a great honor to present this book on 11th of September, because 11th of September, when we look in the past, presents 2 alternative visions of the world. You have 11th of September 2001, and here was a challenge to the unity of mankind. And here was the proof that there is a clash of civilizations. And 11th of September 1893, when, as you rightly mentioned, Swami Vivekananda, the Indian philosopher, presented the concept of what we call in India Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The literal translation is word is one family, but the operational translation is unity of mankind. So it's a significant day, and on this day, to present this book here on the platform of Club de Madrid is a great honor. The book was, I wrote the book in 2022, and then the French publishers approached me in 23, and then it was, the French edition came out in 23. And then Alejandro Diego, the chairman of Nola editores in Spain, he approached me. And so now it's available in Spanish. So it's now available in from today, it's available in 3 UN languages, English, French, and Spanish. Now, between the time the English book was published in 22 and now the Spanish edition coming out,
so many things happen.
So many things happen. The Ukraine war, Middle East, so many things happen. So Alejandro, the publisher, he said, is there something we want to update? Interestingly, 300-page book. I went through it, other editors went through it, he went through it, his team went through it. And in 300-page book, with all that happened, I found 8 words that needed to change. The rest of the book is exactly as it was written in 2022. So whatever I said in 2022, every single sentence applies even today. But some conceptual changes took place. So I added a Spanish preface for the Spanish edition, which is different from the English and the French edition. And these conceptual changes, there are 2 that I would mention because I really want to have a dialogue with you. But 2 things that have happened. On the surface, you look at Ukraine or Gaza or this or that, but beneath the surface, the one big conceptual change that has happened is that international law has broken down. International law had been violated in the past, even before 22, but now it's really broken down. And it's broken down not because some country invades Ukraine, some country invades Gaza, some country invades somebody else, Armenia, whatever. It's not only because of that, but you have a president of the most influential country in the world, and he says he doesn't regard the tariffs and trade agreements that were reached in the past. He says, I have a desire to grab Greenland, so I can grab Greenland. I want to have Panama. I'll have Panama. So the whole international law has broken down. All the arms control agreements which were negotiated from 85 to 2002, most of them have been dismantled except for the New START Treaty. So we are in a much more dangerous period than we were in the Cold War. In the Cold War, you had an extremely risky competition between the US and Soviet Union and their blocs. But you had many dialogue mechanisms, and you had a whole infrastructure of institutions and treaties, including the CSE, Helsinki Final Act, and all of that. Now, in the last 10 years, and particularly last 3 years, the system is broken. You don't have any kind of dialogue mechanisms, you don't have institutions, the UN Security Council is facing impasse, and the the stability talks which were started by US and Russia in July 2021 collapsed. There are no such talks between US and Russia anymore, not between US and China at all. So the whole, and there is a complete disregard for law. I'm not going into the merits and demerits of the Middle East issue, but just see the behavior. Like Israel one day decides I want to attack Lebanon, another day I want to attack Qatar, another day I want to attack Iran, and we just attack. Russia can just attack Ukraine, Armenia, Azerbaijan, you mentioned. So the whole international law is broken down. So that is one. The second thing that has happened since 22, which did not exist before 22, is that now we are in the AI arms race in the world, particularly between US and China, but it's also expanding. Now, what do these 2 developments signify? the first development of the breakdown of international law and having many expressions, but one of the expressions is the tariff war, which is taking place in the world, is exactly what's happening in 1930s. And in 1930s, you had the tariff wars, and in the background of the breakdown of international relations, international law, which led to the Second World War. The AI arms race between US and China is very much reminiscent of the naval arms race between Britain and Germany at the beginning of the last century. So the tariff wars led to the Second World War, and the naval arms race, which can be compared to today's air arms race, led to the First World War. So you have the pathways to the First World War and the Second World War merging together. And I think the risk of a Third World War cannot be ruled out. I'm not saying it will happen, but it cannot be ruled out. On the top of that, in the First World War and the Second World War, the political leaders and the military commanders were taking decisions. However crazy, good, bad, whatever, but they were human beings, they were taking decisions. Today, the technology, some aspect of technology have become so autonomous that the decision to kill and terminate humanity can be taken by an algorithm. Not just by the military commanders or the presidents and prime ministers, but even by algorithm. So we are on two dangerous paths. One comparable to the the days before Second World War, the second comparable to. So this is the time we are in. We are, I would say, in the most dangerous phase in the history of Homo sapiens, in the history of human species. It's not just the most dangerous in the last few decades. It's the most dangerous in the history of human. Now the question is, what do we do? How do we come out of it? That's the question you ask, and we will then continue the dialogue.
And I am particularly interested in exploring what we can do, and also, I mean, because reading your book, it's important that even if the situation is so dangerous, I mean, you have highlighted, I mean, the level of difficulty, you have bring a number of solutions, positive solutions. So I would love to go to that, but before that, in the analysis dimension, no? Because I work for Club de Madrid. Club de Madrid is an organization of former presidents and prime ministers from democratic countries. So we work a lot on political leadership. And one of the aspects, in addition to the, I mean, crisis of the international law, and the artificial intelligence role in the nuclear armament career and the war dimension of artificial intelligence, you also bring the issue of leadership, and especially hyper-nationalist leadership as an element of these days, which is particularly worrisome. So I would like to expand a little bit on that as one of the factors, no, that put us in this difficult situation.
Ruben, I feel we are facing three crises as a humanity, as the world. One is the technological crisis, I already mentioned, so I will not go back to it. Second is institutional crisis, I kind of referred to it, I will not go back to that. But the third, and the most important, is that we are facing moral and conceptual crisis. People talk about technological crisis because they can see it. They talk about institutional crisis, they see UN, Security Council, impasse, and so many other things to a standstill. Moral and conceptual crisis you don't seize, but they are the most serious. During the Cold War, the concept of the world was clear. The world is divided in two blocks, US led by a bloc, Soviet Union led a bloc, they are doing confrontation, whatever. But the concept was clear. After the collapse of the former Soviet Union, a new theory came, which was the clash of civilizations. And the new concept was that, we are no longer divided on ideological grounds, but the world is divided on a religious or civilizational grounds. I used to go to Davos regularly, and Samuel Huntington, who came with this clash of civilization theory, used to be in the same hotel, and we used to walk together to the Congress House. And every morning he told me, I never said there should be clash of civilizations. I said there could be clash of civilizations, and we have to prevent it. But this is what Huntington himself told me every single morning in Davos. But the political leaders used clash of civilization as if he's saying there should be clash of civilization. So they use his intellectual capital to promote a political agenda. And since then, the decline of morality has started very severely. And today we are in moral and conceptual crisis. How do you define the word? What is the concept that can bring the humanity together? Are there any concepts? Is there any serving? There are many former leaders who have high moral values, who want to make efforts, and many of them are members of the Club de Madrid. But is there any serving leader who has the state apparatus at his disposal and who is thinking of the unity of mankind, who is thinking of how to go forward, how to promote an inclusive world? And so we are in deep conceptual crisis, ethical crisis. And of course, you can say these crises are leadership crises, but they are worse than leadership crisis. Because at least in the autocracies, you can say leaders came by military coup or by some other method. But in democracies, these leaders have been elected by the people. I won't say the elections in the US were rigged or the Brexit referendum was rigged. These have been elected by the people. So it's the will of a significant portion of the population, of the electorate in democracies, not to mention autocracies at all. So it's not just the leaders, it's the people who are electing them, and they are wanting these kinds of extremely narrow nationalist kind of view of the world. So these are moral crises at the level of people for which there are reasons that we can look at them. But this is elected. So let's not say it's only the leaders.
Yeah.
The leaders are in the end in political market. If the leaders feel that they can win by promoting conciliation, statesmanship, peace, global public goods, they will promote that because they know that's what will elect them. But if they think that hatred of the enemy state or rival state, the missuspicion propaganda, if that is going to help them win, they will promote that. I'll give you one last example and stop in answer to this question, and that is Ronald Reagan. So Ronald Reagan was one of the most hawkish presidents in the history of the United States. He wanted Star Wars when he first became president. When he was contesting for the second term, he saw a movie called The Day After, which showed that if a nuclear war takes place, US and Soviet Union would be finished. And at that time, Randolph Warsworth, who was a peace activist, just a committed peace activist, not any famous person, she's launched a campaign against militarism and against particularly nuclear weapons. And she got 1 million people on the streets. And political advisors to Reagan told him that if you promote hawkish military stance, you will lose the elections. But if you go with freeze movement and peace, you will win the elections. And Reagan, being in the market, he thought to win the elections, I had to be on the side of peace. But today, in many countries, political leaders are told that you criticize and you make the enemy of your opposite country or whoever the rival country, and you win the election. The moment they feel that they are going to lose the election, they will they have no values. Their only value is to win. They only worship success. They will go on the side of peace or sanity or reconciliation or welfare. Mm-hmm. So it's not only limited. It's down in the society.
So moving on that, following on that, on the model crisis, also in the institutional crisis, one of the aspects you have already mentioned is that there is a focus on the national dimension. So the leaders are mostly worried and mostly focused on the national interests of their own countries. So there is not an institution who is taking care of global public goods, including global peace. No? And supposedly this should be the United Nations, but in United Nations, the member states and their leaders, behave like they are focusing only on their national interests and not the global interests of the whole humankind. So is this a model that should be changed? Is there any way that we can still, let's say, having the United Nations at the global platform, but changing something to allow for global planetary concerns to be brought there and in a more efficient way?
One comment on the problem, and we'll move towards solutions.
Sure.
My comment on the problem is that I fully agree with you about the way UN is functioning. And I would just put it in a simple way that UN has become a market for bargaining your national interest, rather than a place for developing universal consensus. Every negotiation, whether it is for trade, whether it is for nuclear weapons, whether it is for peace, whether it is for health, whether it is for COVID, it's all from national point of view. And in every negotiation, you are either protecting or promoting national interest. So UN has become just a marketplace where you go to the market like a stock market and you bargain for your interest. That's what it is. Now, how do we come out of this? So I have given some solutions, and I'll mention a couple of them, and at different levels. At the very practical level, which also has institutional dimension, we are living in a world where there are some problems which are day-to-day problems, which can be managed by the states, by the governments, and where they are transboundary, they can be managed by negotiations between the states. Okay, so the UN model can work because you are negotiating your interest versus the interest of the other countries. But now some problems have come up which are universal or planetary or civilizational, whatever word term you want to use. They are not national, but they are not even transnational. They are universal. They are civilizational. So, and I would mention 4 that come top of my head, but there could be others that can come up in future. So you have the question of the risk of a global nuclear war. If a war takes place in somewhere in Europe, still most of Africa, a lot of Middle East, half of Asia is going to be destroyed. So it's not limited to the theater of war. It's a universal problem. Second, climate emergencies. I'm not just talking about climate change, which could take several decades, but climate emergencies, extreme weather events. If you have massive cyclone taking place in Atlantic, on the eastern coast of Atlantic, you could have half the world affected by that. Third is pandemic. Coronavirus or COVID-19 proved it, but there can be much worse pandemic. And the fourth is the overreach or going out of control of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and other technologies. These 4 problems do not recognize national borders. So when there is a forest fire in Australia, in 2 days' time or 3 days' time, you have carbon dioxide moving to Chile or Brazil. This carbon dioxide doesn't go to the consulate and apply for visa to go to Chile or Brazil. It goes on its own. And so if there is a dangerous pathogen that comes out of China, within 3 weeks, it comes all the way to Spain and Portugal. And it doesn't go to the Spanish consulate in Shanghai or Beijing and apply for a visa. So your national sovereignty is irrelevant as far as these existential problems are concerned. So we need a structure in our multilateral organizations whereby one layer addresses problems within the countries and between the countries, and there is a small layer which addresses the civilizational or planetary problems. So more than Security Council, which is involved with managing day-to-day problems, you need in the UN a civilizational crisis response council, which is going to respond only to the civilizational crisis. So it doesn't try to solve the problem between Ethiopia and Eritrea. That Security Council can do. But when it comes to existential problem, defined by scientists as existential and planetary and civilizational, that council should be able to provide solutions. And if this council has to succeed, the first and foremost, you have to take away nationalism from its formation and appointments. Today, as you know, even the UN Secretary General, the judges of the International Court of Justice, head of WTO, every single post is a result of lobbying by countries. So you have a candidate for Secretary General, I have a candidate for Director General for WTO, and it's all bargaining. And then you are calling countries and you are asking them to vote.
The candidate for Spain, the candidate for Chile, the candidate. It's not the a candidate for mankind.
Yeah. So, but this civilizational crisis response council, we need the formation in such a way that they are not nominated by countries. They have to be. Now, what is the other way? That's a question of a lot of technical detail, and it's in the book. I want you to read the book, so I won't give you the myth, what is there, what is discussed. So that is one. So that is one response that is required. The second, which I mentioned only in the Spanish edition of the book, not in the original book, in the conceptual part, in the preface, is that one of the problems of last 3 years of this institutional collapse is the neutral states are declining. Finland has now joined NATO. Switzerland is still officially neutral, but anybody who knows what's happening in Bern knows that Switzerland is moving towards NATO in spirit, if not in, and it's not all the Swiss people, but it's the Federal Council, and there is opposition, but it's slowly moving toward. Austria, as far as I know, is more or less, but neutral states have. We need a neutrality council in the United Nations rather than the Security Council. Security Council is there to management of security. Neutrality Council should be there to sort out the problems between the countries from a neutral position and mediate. Security Council is formed by the big powers, and it's the big powers who are creating the problems. And you ask them to solve the problems, it will never happen. You will have impasse in the Security Council. You need a neutrality council of middle powers and small powers who will mediate between the big powers. And if it is one country, of course, the US or China, depending upon its location, they will shut this country up. But if 100 countries come together, then it will be very difficult for the big countries to crush them.
So you refer in your book, no, to the non-alignment movement, no, that was coming from India, no, who was one of the initiators, no, of that during the Cold War. So we need that kind of dynamic, but now
in a modern form. In a modern form. So for example, if you look at some of the recent events, the exchange that took place of missiles between Israel and Iran, it was all stage managed. It was not real. It was theater. So it was all decided by Turkey. So Turkey negotiated with Israel and Iran, you send so many missiles, then they will send so many missiles. And when Iran used to send the missiles, they would inform Turkey, Turkey would inform Israel, and they would bring down these missiles before they enter the Israeli territory. You do 2 rounds, back and forth, it's settled. So
a theater.
It's a theater. This is what happened in 2 rounds of Israel-Iran conflict. This is what actually happened. I think it probably happened. I don't know about this. About the Israel-Iran, I know. But about Qatar, because I was on the flight when it happened, it's possible. It's the same theater. So, but it was possible because Turkey could negotiate. You had a neutral country to negotiate. I'm not saying this is kind of a
more Turkeys, no? We need more Turkeys around the world.
You need a whole coalition of many countries. Turkey also, I'm not one advocate or ambassador of Turkey, but I'm just recounting some history, negotiated a peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia in March 22. Under this peace treaty, and this is direct, first hand I'm talking about, not something I've read, this is that under this peace treaty, Putin agreed to pull back the Russian forces to the borders of 21st February 2022, that's the day before he invaded Ukraine. He not only agreed, his representative has signed the draft agreement. So this is not some moral agreement or whatever informal. This is signed. It is signed by Zelensky's representative, it's signed by Putin's representative. He agreed for that. He agreed to, and there were a number of other provisions which were agreed by, and so there was, he even agreed to put Crimea on table for 10 years. He even agreed. It's a signed document between, so this is what happened. Ukraine conflict could have been over on 3rd April. So within 6 weeks of it started, 3rd April, very important for me, my birthday. So it could have been a gift.
You remembered.
Yeah, I remember it, 3rd April. But Ukraine conflict could have been over. But on 3rd April, Boris Johnson visited Kiev. And I have no access to what happened between Zelensky and Kiev. But the 4th April, Zelensky said, I don't follow this. Any deal that will be mediated by President Trump in future or by anybody else, whoever the mediator, will be much worse than the Istanbul Accord. I am ready to bet a bottle of beer or a Shangri-La on this. If the terms are better, then you buy me a bottle of Shangri-La. If the terms are worse, then I do. Whatever. The point is that so you had a deal, but that was possible because Turkey supported with Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN. They had to. So there have been efforts for peace which have succeeded. But you need, why it failed? Because one, Turkey was alone. If you had 20 countries or 30 countries back in Turkey, it would have been difficult for Boris Johnson to go on a surprise visit to Kiev and to intervene. So that's why. So it worked between Israel and Iran, but this is much bigger, Russia, Ukraine. So you need a group of neutral countries, but neutrality in a modern sense. So Turkey is NATO, Spain is NATO. So in a way, they are not neutral. They are part of a military alliance. But they can be neutral on issues, on playing certain role. So this is what I call modern neutrality, that you are, even though part of one military alliance, it's not that you dismantle NATO and you go away. It's not realistic. You have to be politically realistic, but it's possible. So Civilization Crisis Response Council, one, Neutrality Council, or a big Congress or a coalition of neutral countries. That is second. This we are talking about institutional level. And the third is a proposal, in fact, promoted by Global Governance Forum, which is based in Madrid, the headquarters in Madrid, is a concept of some kind of people's representation at the second chamber, like a World Parliamentary Assembly. So currently, United Nations Organization is a United Governments Organization. It's not United Nations Organization. And so everybody is considered to be. So you need an adjunct assembly, which is people's assembly. How you form it, there are complicated issues, because if it is election, many countries don't have elections. So how? But in concept, so there are some reforms which can take place. You have to strengthen International Court of Justice. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. Now, if you want to do that, there are already legal instruments existing. And I'll mention only two of them. One is legal, one is political. So you don't have to start writing a new treaty. There are two. One is the Geneva Accord. Geneva, what's it called? Protocol. The additional protocol, Article 50 to 54, which is signed by almost all countries in the world, to my knowledge, already commits the signatories not to harm a civilian object or a civilian person. This exists. It's part of the international law. Countries have signed it. But you need to mobilize political force behind it to make it work. Because this is one thing is violated. But it's violated as a political action, not because there is an absence of law. You have the Geneva protocols Article 50 to 54, it very clearly defined, very properly defined. Civilian object, civilian person, both. So you cannot attack anybody on any pretext. The second, in December 1961, the UN General Assembly unanimously passed a resolution jointly moved by the United States and the Soviet Union at the height of Cold War, UNGA Resolution 1722, which provided for principles of resolving international conflicts by means other than war or military confrontation. This resolution has been accepted. It exists in the law, not in the law because GA resolution is not a law, but as a moral capital, it exists. So you don't have to start inventing. What actually I'm currently collaborating with one of the members of Club de Madrid. I don't know if he told you, his name is Stefan Löfven, a former Prime Minister of Sweden.
Yeah.
So he and I, we have been collaborating to update these principles and actions which were proposed. Because 61, some of them were so puritanical that today it might be impossible to implement them. So that was 1961, but it's something that can be even workable in 2061. So how to do that? So we have been working, we presented our initial ideas in a joint op-ed which was published in Le Monde, the French newspaper, and is being discussed in. But other intellectuals, they can work on it. There a lot of work that needs to be done on that. So there are instruments, but this is all institutional and legal. Underpinning any change is always the mindset. Einstein said in many different ways that unless you break down your old mental structures, you cannot create new one. And that is the challenge. And one simple example, and this mindset is shaped by many things, by media, by governments, by educational institutions, by gossip, by talking to each other, by meetings like this. But what is the mindset today? Let me ask your audience, how many of you knew that there was a peace treaty signed by Zelensky's representative and Putin's representative in March of 2022, within 1 month of invasion, whereby Putin agreed to pull back his troops? How many of you knew? You didn't
Anyone?
Know? Anyone? Yes, you knew. How many of you knew that there is the 1722 resolution, which has established principles and actions for resolving conflicts without, and it's an anonymous resolution? I mean, maybe 1-2 people know, but by and large, so we have somebody here who knows, but by and large, people are not informed. But everybody is discussing every move in the war. You are taught how to win the war. You are not taught how to establish peace. And this brainwashing is taking place of the humanity at large. Another fact which more people will know than our friend here and there, but still many people don't know, there are 193 countries in the UN, undisputable, you accept it? 23 countries in the world do not have any weapons or armies or ministries of defense. 123 countries endorse the TPNW resolution, Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So they have voluntarily given up any interest in nuclear weapons. So out of 193 countries, 23 have given up army and this. Of course, they have security guarantees, but that's diplomatic smartness. But they have some of them had, not all of them, some of them had, but they have given up the military option. 123 have given up nuclear option. This is not my thinking. It's legal information. You get it. Next statistics: 163 countries out of 193 countries have a combined military expenditure of roughly $250 billion. So each one of them on an average $1 to $2 billion. Maybe somebody 4 pi and the other one less than 1 billion. So 163 countries are saying that they are not looking at the destruction of humankind as their preferred policy. So what you are left with is 30 countries who between them are expending $2,400 billion of the world's global military expenditure of $2,700 billion. So out of these 30 countries, US is one of them, India is one of them, China, Russia. Of course, not everybody wants to have global wars and no response to global public goods and destroy the humanity. Not everybody. So there are people who want a better world and they want survival of humanity. So in each country, this agenda is driven by few 100,000 people. So in these 30 countries together, maybe you have 8 or 9 million people who are driving this agenda of war and of confrontation. So in a world of 8 billion people living in 193 countries, we have been taken for a ride by some 8-9 million people. That's it. For centuries, for millennia, humanity has learned to coexist. The very origin of life, not only human life, but all life, is based on coexistence. So long as there was a single cell, there was no life. It's only when the cells came together and they were formed together, the life came into existence. That's the origin of life. So long as there were atoms, there was no life. When the atoms came together and molecules were formed, there is life. So the coexistence, it's at the very origin of life, not just human life, for everything. And so also at the origin of human life and the progress of human life. So humanity, by and large, want coexistence, want collaborative survival, want progress. This is what humanity wants. Even the nation states want that. 163 nation states want that. So you have 8, 9 million, maybe 10, maybe 20 million people who are holding 8 billion people on the planet for ransom. And who are these 8, 9 to 10 million people? What are their, and who are their leaders? Just see, you look at all the Russian leaders. We are in Europe. You look at Russian leaders, American leaders, European leaders. Let's look at Ukraine war. And I won't name them, but you know them. Who are the European leaders saying that we must send arms and we must send people and troops to the front line of Ukraine? And the Russian leaders saying we must send people to the front line of Ukraine? How many of the sons, daughters, nephews, and nieces of these leaders are ready to go to the front line of Ukraine? So when it comes to war, it's the sons of the poor farmers and the transportation workers, they have to go. And you want to fight the war till the last Ukrainian or even to the last Frenchman from the rural area. But are you ready to send your own children?
Or themselves.
Or themselves.
Because in the past that was the case. I mean, the military, they put the war
always there was a prince was fronting the war. So we have been taken for a ride as humanity, as human population, by extremely manipulative, extremely selfish, extremely greedy bunch of 8, 10, 9 million, 8, 10, 20 million people. And we have allowed ourselves to be fooled and to be deceived by these 10, 20, whatever number of people in the name of religion, in the name of nationalism, in the name of ethnicity, all kinds of things. And I'll tell you one small story of what is this nationalism. Earlier you asked about nationalism. First hand, I was in Kiev, okay? I was in Kiev. I don't know how many of you have been to Kiev, some of you have been. And this is I mentioned in my second chapter of the book, in the beginning of the second chapter. I'll summarize in one sentence. There I have mentioned in detail. So in Kiev, there is a place called St. Andrew Church. And there is a street that starts from St. Andrew Church. It's called Andrishki Descent. Mm-hmm. It's about 700 meters. So in 2018, November, December, it was cold. I was there. And I walked on a Sunday morning on this Andrishki Descent. And I see on both sides, there are old people, average 75, 80 years old people, sitting with some things in their front. So I got curious and I went there and I saw what is there. And they were selling the insignia or the symbols on the military uniforms of the soldiers who fought in the Second World War. And these soldiers were their uncles or fathers or whatever, their relatives, and they had put in the family, and now they took it out of the uniform and they're selling. And so they were all selling for 2-3 euros. Now the Second World War was fought in the name of national honor, national security, national pride. The symbol of that national pride was this insignia on your military uniform. And this symbol, this great nationalism, which cost 100 million lives in Europe, is available for 2 euros on the streets of Kiev. That is the value of nationalism. That 75 years later, you kill 100 million people, you destroy half of the continent, and 75 years later, your nationalism is on sale for 2 euros, 3 euros. I was actually going to buy 10, 15 of them. My colleague, Ilma, she was with me. And she said, no, don't buy. These soldiers were dying when they were wearing this uniform, and they gone through so much pain, so much psychological trauma. So don't have their what they were wearing at that time.
The karma of it could be.
So I didn't buy them. But this is, and at that time, Ukraine and Russia were part of one nationalism, the Soviet Union nationalism. And soon afterwards, a Ukrainian Khrushchev became the president of the whole of Soviet Union. Now, Ukraine and Russia are two different nationalism. They're promoting, and they're again fighting in the name of nationalism. So, what it proves is that what was nation as the Soviet Union in 1945 is no longer a nation. You have some different set of nations, not only Ukraine, Russia, but Azerbaijan, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, whatever. And same thing with Yugoslavia, same thing with many other countries in the world. So your whole concept of nationalism has a life of some 75 years or 80 years. So that shows, it's even less than a life of a healthy human being. So it shows how temporary, how short-lived this whole concept of nation is. So nationalism is not an eternal value. It's a tool created for convenience by the political leaders to aggrandize themselves and to protect and promote their interests. If it was eternal, it would go on for thousands of years. It would not evaporate in 50 years or 60 years or 70 years. And not just the dismantling of Soviet Union, but you look at 300 years. 300 years ago, what were the nations? How many of them are existing today? What was the map of Spain in 1620, 1625? And what is the map of Spain in 2025? What happened to that nationalism? You can't last for 100, 200 years and you call it nationalism? And you promote nationalism as if it is some great eternal value? It's a fraud. Nationalism is promoting nationalism is at something like a value, is a fraud that is used for perpetuating their leadership.
So let's move to a couple of, let's say, solutions and then open the dialogue to the public. You talk about, don't want to make spoilers, but another of your proposals is this possibility of developing a new global social contract, no?
Yes.
That will be, let's say, another way, no, to fight this national dimension, nationalism outlook. So can you explain a little bit about that?
See, Rousseau wrote about or proposed social contract in 1762. So at that time, his concept of social contract was within the confines of a state. Yeah. In fact, he spent half his life in Geneva, as you know. Mm-hmm. And so for him, the state or the country was a city or at the most like France, like a big country. So for 300 years or whatever number of years from 1762 until now, social contract worked within the country. So what is social contract? It's the terms of relationship between the society and the state, or between the individual and the government, to put it in a very simple way. And the social contract can. But now the word has integrated so much in the last 30, 40 years. We discussed 4 crises or existential risk which are global. But there are also many global benefits and public goods which are global. So there are many things, both on the side of benefits and risk, which are beyond national boundaries, which are global. So we now have to go beyond social contract as defined by Rousseau to the idea of a global social contract. And so what was the social contract? You had a loyalty to your nation. What is a global social contract? You have a dual loyalty. I'm not saying give up your loyalty to the nation, because nations that exist, and so long as they exist and so long as we find some another concept, they exist. So you have the loyalty to the nation, but at the same time have a loyalty to humanity. You have a loyalty to the human civilization. And one of the greatest intellectual and moral challenges before us is how to make this kind of a system based on dual loyalty viable, because the viability is what matters most. Well, this is an intellectual challenge, and we need harnessing of lot of intellectual capacity in the times to come to define it. I made some efforts in the book to do it, but I acknowledge that that's just the beginning, or it's just spreading some seeds. But this is an effort that's really required on a collective basis.
And before passing the word to the audience, and if you have a question or reflection, you can start thinking about doing it, because it will be your turn very soon. But I think a positive aspect, and you also have this in your book, is that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, no? And it's surprising, and sometimes we forget about it, including, I mean, the issues that you have asked the audience, no? That Gandhi, for example, have put, decades ago, some very useful ideas, no, about how to articulate some of these solutions that you are putting. So it's not that we need to start from scratch.
Right.
No, they are great thinkers and very influential figures that has been putting ideas on the table.
Absolutely, I agree with you. There is a whole history of thinkers who have come up with different ideas. And you mentioned Gandhi. Of course, there is another great Indian thinker, Rabindranath Tagore, who said how to, in fact, he called nationalism menace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he called it menace. And Einstein, who was kind of parallel to Tagore, and both are Nobel laureates, he called nationalism the missiles of mankind. Because, those days, those who have medical background will know missiles was a big problem. If Einstein was alive today, he would probably call nationalism coronavirus of mankind. So those days it was the missile, because it's dangerous. It destroys human body, but it travels very fast. Yeah. But the thought process has evolved over centuries. But what I would like to conclude this part of our conversation by saying two things. The initiation of this thought process of a world without war. I'm not the first person to write a book called A World Without War. I'm just the latest one to express this. But the first two books on A World Without War were written in France and Spain in the middle of a 30-year war. So the originators of this concept of a world without war is the great French scholar and thinker Émeric Crusset, and the great Spanish thinker Diego Saavedra. And in fact, in Madrid, there is somewhere a street called Calle Saavedra. So I want to visit it if I can during the weekend. So these are the thinkers. They presented. What was interesting was that they presented this concept right in the middle of the 30-year war. Not after the war is over. And so that's why people ask me, why you write World Without War when so many wars are happening? I said, precisely when the wars are taking place, you have to think of World Without War. Everything is peaceful, nice, and then you write World Without War, it is no meaning. It's like I was once advising the negotiators between India and Sri Lanka on tea market. And they reached an agreement. And they said, no problem, tea we can, because there is a competition between India and Sri Lanka. And so they reached an agreement on the minimum price. And the agreement after some time collapsed. And they came to me and they said, what happened? What did we do wrong? We reached a nice agreement signed by the two governments. I said, you're crazy. You reach an agreement on minimum price when the price is rising. What is so difficult to reach an agreement when the price is rising? You have to reach an agreement on minimum price when the price is falling. So similarly, when the stock of humanity is rising, the stock of peace is rising, you reach an agreement, there is no big deal. You need to reach an agreement when the stock of humanity, the stock of hope is falling. That's exactly when you reach the agreement. And we have to keep in mind the capacity of humans to not only coexist, but to do away with the problems. 10,000 years ago, or maybe 15,000 years ago, cannibalism was there. People used to eat other human beings. Today, cannibalism is not accepted. Maybe there is somebody who's doing it, but it's illegitimate. It's not accepted. Till 300-400 years ago, slavery was there. Till 100 years ago, there was colonization. Till 30 years ago, there was apartheid. Till 100 years ago, there was a deliberately low role for women in the political decision making. So human society, human civilization has done away with cannibalism. Human society has done away with slavery. I'm not saying in a perfect way, there are exemptions. Human society has done away with women's political discrimination. Not again everywhere, there are societies, but by and large, human society has done away with apartheid. Human society is even doing away with smoking. That's less significant, but as compared to the others. So human society is capable, human mind is capable, not only of inventing AI and robots and all that, human mind is also capable of inventing new concepts of coexistence and of human progress and harnessing the best of human mind. But we have to be aware. The leaders are telling us that focus your energy on fighting the enemy and giving us the sanction to make a huge budgetary allocation to the military. But we as humans must realize that humans are a lot more capable than just fighting the enemy. We are capable of ending slavery. We are capable of ending cannibalism. We are capable of ending apartheid. So we are a lot more capable than what we are manipulated, cheated by the leaders and their advisors in media and their other people to believe. And we have to break free. We have to break free from the shackles. And Rousseau said that a man is born free, or human is, in his days he would say man, but I would say woman is born free, but everywhere he is in shackles. That's the first line of social contract published in 1762. If I'm writing global social contract, I would say the same thing. Human is born free, but everywhere we are in shackles. Shackles created by ourselves, by our accepting the shackles. We have to break free these shackles. Then it's possible to create a global social contract. Then it's possible to move from the darkness in our mind to the light. Then it's possible to move from a fragmented society to the unity of mankind, as Swami Vivekananda said on this very day in 93. And then it is possible to think of a world without war as a value, as a concept, as a hope. Thank you.
Thank you.